Welcome back. I'm Ana Maria Salazar. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us here and living in Mexico. We are basically 3 weeks away from elections in Mexico. And of course, it would be natural for us to spend a lot of time on the show to talk about what's going to happen on June 2nd. And there has been a lot of news where at different, if you listen to the opposition, they're claiming that they're growing enough that they'll be able to at least win a number of governorships, even possibly the presidency, but clearly they won't have a majority in that they will have a majority in both the Senate and in Congress. But if you listen to the official party and their allies, they of course are talking about a done deal that the next president of Mexico will be from Morena, Claudia Sheinbaum, and that they will be winning most of the governorships and that they will have a majority, a super majority, so that they will control and be able control the destiny of this country because they will be able to do the constitutional reforms that they were unable to do during this administration. So that's why I really appreciate today's guest joining us once again, Carlos Ramirez. Um, from Integralia. So what is it? Where are we, Carlos? Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ana Maria. Thank you for having me. Where are we? Good question. The election is 3 weeks away from us, and there is certainly two broad views on how this election could end up finishing. In the view of several political analysts and basically more of the elite political analysts in Mexico, there seems to be a tighter race than what polls are showing right now, right? Basically the explanation for that is that there could be some hidden votes of opposition potential voters that are preferring not to reveal their true political preference for any reason, but at the end of the day, polls are overestimating the official party, right? They are overestimating the support for Claudia Sheinbaum. And that explains in part why there is such a broad variance of results in most of the on many of the polls in Mexico. So just last week there was a poll in newspaper Crónica that showed basically 30-point lead for Claudia, and the same week the pollster Altica, that has been polling every 15 days systematically for the last 6 months, showed a 10-point difference. So how is it possible that two different pollsters are showing such a wide margin of results? So in any case, the point here is, one of the views out there is there is an there's a hidden vote that will end up moving for the opposition, and that will end up closing the race, probably still Claudia being favorite, but winning by a smaller margin that, let's say, less than 10 points away. But yeah, Claudia continues to be relatively the favorite, although there are some people that think that it could end up winning, but there are the minority. Now, there is another view out there that it's gonna depend a lot on what happens on election day, right? Mexico has a history where let's say the apparatus of the political parties are key actors during the election day because they take people out to vote, not necessarily through the best means, right? Many times with monetary support, many times threatening to take them their social program away. I mean, there are many different tactics, not all of them legal. But at the end of the day, the political machineries of the political parties are critical. And there is here a big question about how the political machinery of Morena has been evolving during the past decade or so and has become much more stronger during this past decade than really the PRI and the PAN political machinery that seems to be weaker today than it was 10 years ago. So that is going to be critical, because if the political machineries of the official party come out and the other guys remain a little bit dubious or without enough strength, the election could turn up to be a much broader margin for Claudia, right? As we have mentioned before, Ana Maria, and I'll finish here, it's going to be critical, the turnout, right? How many people go out to vote? The opposition needs plus 60% of participation to have any chance, and certainly to look for an election where things turn up to be much tighter than what some polls are showing. So those two views are out there. It's still very open question. My sense, my personal perspective, that is, it's likely to be something in the middle, right? Something where probably is not going to be a landslide, but it's going to be a significant advantage for the official party candidate, Claudia Sheinbaum.
Well, let me ask you this. Let's talk about the governorships, and let's talk about both the Senate and the lower house, which is with the way that Morena describes, or the president describes, it's Plan C, which is to have enough votes to be able to do the constitutional reforms that President Andrés Manuel López Obrador wasn't able to implement. I mean, how in Mexico do you have that divided vote? Will people vote for Claudia Sheinbaum but decide to vote, if you live in Mexico City, for Santiago Taboada, who is the candidate for the opposition, and is willing to vote for some candidates from the opposition for their local legislative branch, and maybe some for Morena at the national level? I mean, what does this look like on the governorships and the legislative races, and how do people vote?
Yeah, good question. And not a single answer to that, but I'll try to provide you with an overview. Yes, local elections, as in almost everywhere in the world, are more a result of local events, right? So let's say for a state like Veracruz, right, that has a governor that is not very well seen, right, that has levels of popularity relatively low, that people seem to be not happy with how the government has handled different events during the past 6 years. There seems to be like a lot of voters are angry with the status quo, right? And they could end up voting against Morena at a state level, vote for the PRI, for Jose Yunes, but at the same time, they could be relatively happy with the federal government and López Obrador and his potential successor, Claudia Sheinbaum, due to social programs and other issues, and they could end up voting for Sheinbaum. So yes, there could be certainly crossed votes, and also in Congress, right? For example, in 2018, López Obrador won with 30 million votes, which was 53% of the total votes. But in Congress, Morena and allies earned 25 million votes, 5 million votes less than the president. So there seems to be in Mexico some sort of strategic vote, both at the state level and federal level, and vis-a-vis the federal level at a presidential level and Congress. How big is that strategic vote? Difficult to say, because remember, independent voters in Mexico, or at least voters that do not have a very strong, effective, preference for a single party, let's say Morena, or for the opposition, is probably something close to 35% of total voters in Mexico. So it is a huge number, Those guys tend to say at the end of the day, I'm going to vote for a president, but not necessarily I don't want to give them all the power in Congress, and I don't want to give them the power at a local level. So it is a 35% of people that are changing their views every single election. So it's going to happen again. I think my view is that there will be some strategic vote. I'm not sure if it's going to be as big as it was in 2018, but certainly it will be there.
Now, what factors or what issues are you following closely in the next 3 weeks that could define the results?
Very important. For Xochitl Galvez, it is critical, Ana Maria, that she doesn't lose his momentum, right? She seems to have earned a little bit more momentum due to her performance in the second debate, and that has helped her to gain some traction, okay? For them, for the opposition, it is critical to maintain that momentum. First, with the third debate that is going to happen in a week, okay? And second, there's going to be a big march, a big manifestation here in Mexico, where people are going to go out to the streets and basically support Xochitl next Sunday, from this Sunday to the other one.
And it's nationwide, correct? It's a
It is nationwide,
movement.
and it's a way of trying to bring people, I mean, to gain traction and to keep people well involved in the election. That's going to be critical for Xochitl. Obviously, let's see if there are not as always in a campaign, there are events that no one expected, right? We are experiencing right now in Mexico problems with electricity, for example. No one could have ever expected this to happen.
It's electricity, the
outage, right?
The outages around the country. The lack of water also became an issue, particularly this year, because of the heat wave that has hit Mexico. All three of them just seem to have happened at the same time, and of course that produces forest fires and other issues. Hospitals can't work. People there on Friday, a lot of schools just simply had to shut down. It was also Mother's Day, but it was just better to say, you know what, let's not have classes today because there was no electricity, or there was fears that there was going to be an outage. So yeah, you're right. I don't think the government expected that, or they would have tried to avoid the outage at least in the next 3 weeks.
Yeah, that is my point, that unexpected events during the next 3 weeks could still happen, could have an effect on the election. But yeah, I mean, clearly what happens on the election day with the political machinery of each of the parties is going to be critical. What happens with Xochitl Galvez in terms of the momentum that she could maintain during the next weeks. Obviously, the mistakes that one or the other could end up having, and the unexpected. The unexpected is always always present in any election, and I think that we might have some of them during the next weeks or so.
Based on the information we have today, it sounds like you believe it's likely, based on what we know today, that it's likely that Xochitl Galvez is going to win with possibly less than 10 points. With less than 10 points. And what about the governorships? Based on the information we have today?
Yeah. So yeah, our main case scenario at Integralia is that Sheinbaum will prevail by a margin probably not bigger than 10 points, but could be plus or less 10 points. That Morena and allies do not reach a constitutional majority, which is critical for Mexico's democratic future and economic future.
Right.
And at the state level, from the 9 races, 3 are very tight: Mexico City, Veracruz, and Morelos. So they're still very open. Morena has an edge on 3 states, and the opposition has an edge on 3 states. So it's probably gonna end up being a 4-5 or a 5-4, right? 5-4 in favor of Morena or 4-5 in favor of the opposition. Right now is our best guess. It's difficult to say because, again, 3 races are very tight at this moment.
And that's Mexico City, Morelos, and Veracruz?
Exactly. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, the 3 states where Morena has an edge seem to be Tabasco and Chiapas, no question. Puebla probably is going to be much closer, but still Morena has an edge. And the opposition has an edge on Jalisco, on Guanajuato, and Yucatan. But careful with Yucatan because Morena is relatively close and could end up having a surprise there. I mean, but still, the PAN is the favorite to win the election there.
But Jalisco would be won by Movimiento Ciudadano?
Yes,
Or
by
by
Pablo Lemos. Yes.
By Pablo. Wow, this is fascinating. Well, you got to come back in the next before the elections, just in the next 2 weeks, so we can just kind of review what we know about potential results on June 7. I really appreciate you joining us today, Carlos Ramirez from Integralia. He's been joining us throughout the years. It's always great to hear from you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ana Maria. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you. We're going to go to a break. I'm Ana Maria Salazar, and you're listening and watching Living in Mexico. Don't go away. I'll be right back.